Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming today on this brisk day. Feels like winter out there finally. We got that little Walt Disney dusting. I'm very happy to introduce to you today Marilou Maglione, who's a friend of mine, very good friend. And among other things, she is a small-scale beekeeper. So today, Marilou's going to share with us about her practice, her avocation, and talk about plants too that you can plant that bees might like, and also answer any questions or comments you have. So thanks so much, Marilou. I'm going to turn it over to you.
You're welcome. Thank you. One moment. I'm just trying to fix my microphone here. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. I'm trying to adjust mine. It all of a sudden got really loud. So let's see here. I'm not having any luck doing that. All right, we'll just deal with that. Okay, so thank you for joining. I appreciate that, and I'm glad that there's a few of you interested in backyard beekeeping. I started in '03. I took a class and decided I had a lot of things in the garden that just weren't growing very well, and I lived in a farming community, and it seemed like there just weren't any bees around, and so. One winter I was kind of bored and took a class at the extension office, and at the time they were doing it for free and giving away free beehives if you finish the class. And so I thought, well, that's a deal. So decided to go ahead and spend one night a week for the winter going through the program. So anyway, over the years, I've then continued my education in the School of Hard Knocks, and have really learned a lot and keep learning because beekeeping keeps changing. So what I wanted to share with you today here, this is the agenda, a bit of bee trivia. What do beekeepers do? Why do we keep bees as a hobby? A little bit about the different kinds of honeybees out there, their life cycle, and I find it fascinating, the biology. And as a biologist, that appeals to my nerd side. And then how do you get bees? What do you need to take care of them? What can you get in exchange for all of that effort you put in? And then a little bit about how can you help? And you may not want to keep bees yourself, but what can you do to help people who do, and to help all of the wild bees that we have in our neighborhoods? Okay. So, did you know that there are about 20,000 species of bees on the planet? That's a lot of different bees. And about 4,000 of them live in the United States. And of those, 450 live in Virginia, and most of them are solitary bees. There's two categories, ground nesting and cavity nesting. So honeybees are cavity nesting, and they're up off the ground and usually in some kind of a structure. Bees also fall into solitary and social, and so our honeybees are a very social bee. Now, most bees don't sting, and a lot of people are afraid of bees, any kind of bee, because they think that they'll sting, but the vast majority do not. And if a bee is going to sting, it will be a girl. Only girl bees, female bees, have stingers, males never do. There are 7 families of bees, and only one family produces honey, and that's the Apidae family. And of that, in that family, there's only 8 species of true honeybees. And backyard beekeepers like me keep just one species, and there's a few different varieties of that species. And that species is Apis mellifera. So there's a lot of other bees around. Here's a few that you'll see in Virginia. We have bumblebees, mason bees, mining bees, sweat bees. Now, a lot of people will swat at sweat bees. They don't like them, but they're really, really good pollinators. So if you can kind of shoo them away and not squish them, that would be a good thing. This is the Apis mellifera. This is actually one of my bees, or queens here, and some of her bees. So this is the common Italian honeybee. All right, more trivia. So approximately 1/3 of of our human diet is directly derived from pollinated plants. That means that our pollinators are responsible for feeding us. 1/3 of every bite we take is because it got pollinated. That's pretty impressive. Our native bees are actually much more efficient pollinators. They're a whole lot better at the job. It's just that their populations are too low to really do the job in the mass quantities that we need. So we've employed honeybees. The USDA in 2019 estimated that 80% of insect crop pollination is accomplished by honeybees. And that took about 2.8 million hives. And here's something very interesting, that the majority of these hives in the US are cared for by just 120,000 beekeepers, which isn't really a whole lot. And the majority of those are hobbyist beekeepers like me, who only have, under 25 hives. 25 hives is a lot of work. I have about 10. All right, so beekeepers are actually farmers. They are bugs, but they do take a lot of care. And so beekeepers are also called apiarists, apiculturists, or honey farmers. We provide housing, food, healthcare, and protection. There are state laws that tell us what we need to do and how to do it. So if we want to sell bees or buy bees, there are state inspections. To sell honey and other hive products, we also have to be inspected because we could spread disease, and we don't want to do that. And if you've been keeping up with some of the bee info in the news, there's, bees are dying all the time due to various things. And so the laws keep changing and getting more strict. And I'm okay with that, because some people need to do what they can to stop the spread of disease. Like my little tiny bee yard does get inspected periodically, and the state apiarist will come out and ask me to pull out some bees and look at them and do a few other things. And getting a clean bill of health from them is a really proud moment. Virginia continues to sponsor grants to help new beekeepers get into the hobby, and there is a beehive distribution program. I think last year it was a lottery, so you go online as soon as they opened it up and sign up, and if your name got picked, you'd get a couple free hives, which is really quite nice. All right, why keep bees? Well, for me, it was to pollinate my gardens, and then I really got interested in how bees reproduce and breeding bees, and of course, honey's an awesome byproduct. Sometimes I get honey, sometimes I just leave it because, it's their winter food, so they have to make enough for me to steal some. But other things like wax, royal jelly, pollen, those are things that you've probably heard of, and some people farm bees just for those products. And I actually do it just because it's fun. But whatever your motivation, that will determine what you do with your setup and what kind of equipment you need and what type of training you might need to get and what kind of help. So a little bit more on the different types of honeybees. So the Western honeybee, or Apis mellifera, is actually from Europe and the Middle East, and it was first introduced in the state of Virginia in 1622. So it quickly spread to all continents except Antarctica. And in the past couple of centuries, we've now got 7 clear strains, and the 3 most common are Italian, Carniolan, and Buckfast. So you may have heard in the news about Africanized bees, and they're actually originally from Brazil, but they don't have the nicest personalities, but they do produce a lot of great honey in mass quantities. And so as you could tell, how quickly bees spread throughout the continents, Africanized bees are spreading quickly too. So a lot of breeders and researchers are trying to make the most of the genetics that those bees bring into the population, so that we can manage them as their genes spread throughout the bee gene pool. People are also breeding for very resistant strains of bees because bees have a lot of pressure on them, from common diseases to parasites. So in this picture, you'll see one of the biggest threats that beekeepers face, and that is this mite right here. It's like a little bee tick. It's called the varroa mite, and it's a real menace. And so we have to treat for it, but there are new strains that are actually getting better and better at resisting it, and actually chewing the legs off the little mites and doing other things that help keep this from being so detrimental to their populations. All right. So when you're deciding what you want out of your hives, you can look at the different strains and look at their attributes. And so, for example, if you really want a lot of honey, then you'd probably want to go with the Italian bees. If you want a lot of just really focusing on pollination, then there's the Carniolan bees are better at that, as well as the Caucasian bees. So some people are really just wanting to keep bees just for fun, and so you want something that could be really nice and doesn't need to make a whole lot of honey. So to most folks, these strains look very similar or very difficult to tell apart. But after a while, if you look at them side by side, you can tell some differences. And it is fascinating to me how I could have 2 hives next to each other, and they're in the same environment, and same sunshine, same everything, and one could be as nice as can be. I could take the lid off and do whatever I want and they won't sting me, and the other ones, as soon as I just look at them, they want to fly in my face. And so I keep good records, and the ones who aren't so nice, I don't perpetuate their genes if I can avoid it. All right, so this fascinates me, how the bees reproduce. 1 queen per hive, and mama bee there can live up to 5 years. It's an average of 2. She has a really long abdomen, and it doesn't have any fuzz on it, and that's so she can insert it up to 3,000 times a day into various cells in the hive, so she can lay an egg. And she determines whether or not she's going to lay a fertilized egg or a non-fertilized egg based on the size of the cell. So if it's fertilized, it'll turn into a female bee, and unfertilized, it'll be a drone. So all the female bees in the hive actually could lay eggs, except that the pheromones that the queen produces tells all the worker bees not to lay eggs. It suppresses their reproductive organs. So all those eggs, every single egg that's laid will hatch out in 3 days and turn into a little larva. In this chart or little diagram here, you'll see that after the 3rd day, then depending on whether it's a drone, a worker bee, or a queen bee, they grow at different rates. And it takes 24 days to make a drone bee, 21 days to make a worker bee, and only 16 days to make a queen bee. A lot of people find that fascinating because a queen bee, you know, she's bigger, stronger, etc. Why such a short time? Well, they need to replace their queens pretty quickly because no queen, no hive. So it's what she gets fed, and she gets a lot of extra pampering, so she grows quickly. Here is a queen larva, and you can see all of the extra royal jelly that she gets in her queen cell. All right, so the workforce. I think this is just amazing how thousands of bees, it could be up to 60,000 at peak time in the summer, how they work together to make everything just function as it should. So as the workers hatch out, between ages 1 to 5 days, they go right to work cleaning and polishing. They clean up their cells, the one they came out of, as well as their neighbors, and they get everything ready for the next eggs. When they're about 6 days old, they start eating pollen, and then they make food to feed the next generation. Day 13 to 18, they start fanning the nectar, building comb with wax, and carrying out their deceased sisters. At about 19 days of age, they'll start going to the entrance or exit of their hive, and they guard that, and also start making some flights and getting themselves oriented so that they can find their way back, so that when they do start foraging, they can get home. It's also very interesting to note that during the summer, they'll only live about 6 weeks. In the winter, when they're in the hive and they're just trying to stay warm and maintain their core colony to get ready to grow again in the spring, they can live up to 6 months. What kills them so early in the active growing season is that their wings wear out. So they can fly up to about 500 miles, and then their wings are just shredded and they can't go anymore. So on an average foraging trip, they can fly 1 to 2 miles. They can go up to about 5 miles away from home, but then they need to come back because they really run out of energy. And they may take 3, 4, 5 flights a day. It depends on how close their foraging area is. So drones, male bees, that's supposed to be bees, they'll live only about 90 days. Every day after they get old enough to fly, they take off to what's called a drone congregation area, and everywhere there's bees, there's one of those. In my area, there's 2 known ones, and I have the privilege of working with a very knowledgeable beekeeper, and so she knows where the area is. And the drones will go there, and they give off this scent, and then the queens will follow that and fly into this mass of drones to mate. The only role of the male bee is to mate, and so as soon as that happens, they die. If they're not lucky enough to mate during the season, the girls don't keep them in the hive over the winter because they eat a lot of food, so they kick them out at the end of summertime. All right. So you saw how the individual bees, reproduce, but this whole reproductive process is really done as a hive mind kind of thing. So the workers as a whole are monitoring the hive, and when it gets crowded, the worker bees notice that. So here's one of mine that one day I walked out and it's just overflowing. And so that's a big warning sign for a beekeeper. And so you have to do something quick or you're going to lose a bunch of bees. Because they will then prepare to swarm. So when they do get ready to swarm, which is a natural instinct, so one of the things beekeepers are doing the whole time is trying to fight that natural instinct so your bees just don't keep flying away. Because once your hive swarms and all that workforce leaves, then you're not going to get honey because they don't have the resources. So here's an example, again, from one of my hives of when a hive was getting ready to swarm. So I look at a hive like this, I open it up and I take out some frames, and here we see some swarm cells. And what that means is the workers have decided there's not enough room. They're going to make a new colony. And what they're going to do is leave behind some new baby queens, and they're going to take the existing queen with them. So they put her on a diet. They stop feeding her so much so she'll lose some weight so she can fly. The only other time she has flown is when she's mated. And then when she comes home, all she does is lay eggs unless she's going to swarm. And then she has to be able to fly. So while the queen's on a diet and they're rearing some queen cells, scout bees go out and search for a new home. At about day 9, the queen cells are capped. They've done their job, and now the foragers with their queen are ready to go, and they take off. So no matter how well a beekeeper manages, it's going to happen. There are some hives that are very swarmy, and they just like to travel, apparently. And so most of us keep swarm boxes around, and that's a little box with like lemongrass oil in it and some frames. And hopefully if some of your own bees swarm, they'll find your box and you'll get them back. When a new queen comes out, so you'll notice here, there's 3. They build extra, because these are bugs. Anything could happen, they can go out to do their mating flight and get eaten by a bird or get caught in a rainstorm or something. So they always build extra. So and because there's only one queen per hive, what often happens is the first queen out, she'll go around and kill her sisters. So here's the evidence where a queen ate through the side and killed her sister. So if they emerge at the same time and they can get away from each other, sometimes there'll be 2 or 3 new baby queens in there. And then they go out and fly, come back, and they'll fight after they get back. This shows the difference between what we call a virgin queen. She's brand new. She's still bigger than all of her daughters, but this is after she comes back and now she's ready to start laying eggs and her abdomen is a lot bigger. All right, so how do you get bees? Well, there's a few ways. So you can purchase packages. They usually come in a box like this, and there's food in there, and there's a queen in a cage. Okay, this will cost usually between $120 now to $300 for about 3 pounds of bees, which is not that many. It's maybe 15,000 bees. This queen, though, has never been with these bees. So they take a queen from a queen rearing type of process, and they put her in a cage. And these bees may or may not like her. So that's one of the challenges with buying a package, because if you put the queen in with her, let her out of the cage, and they don't like her and they kill her, now you don't have a hive. Okay, and this takes a while to build up because they have to start from scratch. So they have to build comb and get situated. So you probably won't get honey the first year. Another way to do it is to purchase a nucleus hive. And this is a really good way for a beginner to start, or if you just want to add some nice new genetics to your local genetics to your bee yard. And this is where someone will raise bee boxes, and there's a queen and workers, but it's a small, like a half a hive. It's like 5 frames. And the queen is in there laying. You know that they like her. She's, because there's eggs and everything's going well. And so you just basically bring the whole box home, and then you can expand it and take, as they outgrow this box, you move them into a full-size hive, and you're good to go, and you'll get honey the first year. The other way is to catch a swarm, and I love doing this. These are freebies. This is me at a friend's neighbor. A friend of mine called me and said they had a swarm, and so I got my suit on and all my stuff and went over there, and that always makes me happy. I caught them and brought them home, and the nice thing about it is they're ready to swarm. So I mean, once they swarm, they are ready to go somewhere and start a hive. That's their natural instinct. So you put them in a hive and they just go like crazy. And so you'll probably get honey the first year because they're acclimated to the weather and they are healthy and ready to go, unlike some that have been shipped around and boxed up. So I'm sorry. I had a link there, but it's not working. This is another swarm that I caught, and it's really interesting to listen to the hum of the buzz, but I don't see oh, can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay. So once you get the queen in the box, all the rest are going to go right in. All right. So just some basics on equipment. You've probably seen many square boxes of beehives. That's called a Langstroth hive, and it's basically modular, and you can grow it up and then shrink it down. The further up you go, the boxes tend to get smaller. This is where you want them to put their honey, in the small boxes, and one of these boxes, when full of honey, can weigh over 50 pounds. So it gets quite heavy. So I try to use the smallest boxes possible at the top, because otherwise it's just too hard for me. The top bar hives is kind of a fun backyard beekeeper option, and this is where it's a long horizontal kind of hive, and it's a V shape, and we don't have frames that are pre-built. It's just like a bar across the top, and then the bees build their own comb, and you can grow horizontally. The interesting thing about this is, because you can't put it in a typical honey extractor, if you want to get honey from it, you have to crush the whole frame. And then you have wax, etc. So it's not a bad thing, it's just different, and it's very small scale. So with this type of hive, the big boxes, the frames are designed to be interchangeable and to go into an extractor where you can spin the honey out of them, and then you can put the frames back in the hive to be reused by the bees. So here is what a typical box hive looks like, and you can pull the frames in and out. It's all very organized, mainly for the beekeepers. You know, bees don't need to have things square. In fact, if you let them do what they want, they usually do curlicues and fun things like this. But you can see the challenge here, trying to get honey out of this. So we try to force them into a more modular kind of thing. Whatever kind of hive you use, though, there has to be bee space. And this was discovered years ago, and it's really pretty fascinating. So bees don't like space. It's got to be just enough of a gap that they can walk through and do their traveling. But if it's too big, they'll fill it with wax or propolis, etc. So you want to have your woodenware all fit together really well. You can use natural materials or plastic, although bees don't like plastic very much. I used to have plastic, but I've gone back to mostly wood and natural materials. The nice thing about these frames is that I can move them around to strengthen hives, or if they're damaged, you just take it out and put a new one in. Something that has become more of a problem, ironically, here for me in the Charlottesville area than I even had on a very 200-acre farm was predators. I have had a bear haunting my hives for most of last fall, and so this is the mess that was left. This is funny. I think Carolyn knows this. I had put a note out on Facebook saying, "I'm going to harvest honey tomorrow. Who wants some?" And that night, the bear came. I was like, I guess the bears in Charlottesville read Facebook. And so anyway, I had to take some extreme measures to address that and to try to deter the bear. So hopefully this year won't be so bad. And I have a fenced-in yard, and the bear jumped the fence to come in my little tiny yard. Okay, so anyway, now I've got electric fence, and I'm using straps. So if the bear does tip my hive over, hopefully it won't all come apart. Also, we have to deal with skunks. Skunks love eating bees, and so we elevate our hive so that they keep the skunks out. We also have to deal with keeping other bees and hornets out, because who's heard of murder hornets? They were in the news. Yeah, another thing that we need. So the murder hornets will actually go into a beehive and bite the heads off of all of your bees and steal their honey. So we've got a lot of protection that we need to do for our bees. Sorry, there's my clicker. Okay. All right, now just into some basic equipment. So you really don't need tons of stuff. You can get a basic beehive kit here for about $30. You don't have to spend a fortune. A suit's probably $50. So for starting out, you can get into it fairly cheaply. A hive, about $100, empty. So this is the basic stuff. And a smoker, whoops, let me go back. A smoker is probably the most important of these. Your hive tools, they're almost all the same. This is my favorite shaped one. They come in many different shapes, and bee brushes are you can have natural or synthetic bristles. But a smoker, the reason we smoke is to make the bees think that this goes back to their survival instincts. They think it's like a wildfire, and then they start gorging themselves on honey in preparation to fly away to safety. And while they're eating honey, they're not going to sting you. And it also masks their pheromones so that they aren't sending each other alarm messages chemically. So that's your basics. All right, so fundamentals of bee care. So we inspect our hives regularly. In the spring, it does get busy. It's like every 10 days. Otherwise, I could look at them today and 3 weeks from now, they could have swarmed on me. So I have to look often enough that I would catch seeing swarm cells in there and or a dead queen. Oops, I keep doing that. This is one of my queens. I mark mine, and what I'll do when I go into my hives, I look for the queen, I look at the brood. These are baby bees. So here you can see that this queen has filled this frame completely. She's doing a great job. So all of the cells are filled up nice and uniformly. This queen here isn't doing a great job. So she's and the workers will notice that. So if they don't catch it first and start building some supersedure cells to get rid of her, I would notice that and say, you got to go, and I will find another queen and replace her. So it's sometimes hard to find the queen, though, even when she's marked in a bright color. When you figure there's 60,000 bugs and it's just swarming with them when you open the lid, she could be in anywhere. And so you look for indications, like if there are eggs at the very bottom of the cell, if it's still an egg and it's not a larva, she's had to have been there in the past 3 days. That's just bee math, because after 3 days, it's a larva. So I know she's been there 3 days ago. So that's a good thing. So then you look for other like if it's only larva and no eggs, though, that's concerning. If you don't see a single egg, that's a problem. So we look for things like that. Let's see. What I have started doing is when I do find my queen, though, if I have to do a lot of work in that hive, I will catch her and I will put her in a queen catcher. That's because I have accidentally crushed a couple of queens over the years, and that's a bad thing. And actually this last year, I didn't realize I had crushed a queen. I went back about 2 weeks later, and I looked at I was walking by the hive, and or maybe a week later, and I was walking by the hive, and out at the entrance there was a bright pink color, and I looked, and it was the worker bees carrying out the dead queen to dispose of her, and apparently I had killed her when I had put the hive back together. So now I catch her if I see her, do my business, and then the very last thing I do is release her back in. All right. So we also have to feed, and it's very difficult to maintain bees without feeding them even just a little bit. So certain times of the year we have to feed more than others. So in the springtime we get them going with a 1-to-1 sugar syrup, and I put essential oils in it, and you can buy them all mixed up, called Honeybee Healthy, and there's a couple other brands, and that just gives them some additional protection from bacterial and parasitic infections. During the winter time, we feed sugar candy. This is a special box that goes on top of the hive that they can crawl up and eat during the winter. There are certain times of the year, like in late summer, when there's almost nothing blooming, and if you have taken off too much of their honey and don't feed them something else, they can starve to death. I have starved bees by not understanding in the past how much they really needed to get to the next phase. And I've always felt really bad about that, because you go in and look, they look like they're all doing well. You go back a couple weeks later and you peek in there and all these bees are stuck into the frames with their little butts sticking out, and they're all dead, and they were looking for food. And then I feel it's a heartbreaking thing to see. So I've gotten to where I know what the seasons are and what plants are blooming when in this area and when they might need food. Also, if you have a really, really wet season, like let's say it's raining for days at a time, like this past spring, how much it rained, they can't go out and forage, and so you might need to give them a little something because they can't go fly. So other duties that beekeepers have to do is just monitor the entrances at different times of the year and make sure that that we adjust the size of the hive with the boxes so that they can stay warm. And here's a cool little graphic. It shows that in the winter there may be only about 10,000 bees, and you don't need much room for them, and they don't want much room because they have to maintain the temperature. But that in the middle of summer it can go up to like 60,000. And then it'll drop back off. So we keep adjusting the size of our boxes to accommodate that. All right, so so part of the cycle of caring for them is seeing what they need. If you want to create more hives, and you've got a lot of extra bees, you can create more hives. You can give them away. You can just keep an extra hive as a spare. Like if you crush a queen, you have an extra hive. You can now take that queen and her bees and put them into the hive where your queen's gone. So here's a honey frame. This is a beautiful honey frame, and it fits perfectly into an extractor, and you can spin that honey out. Something I also do is whole frame or comb honey. I love comb honey, and I'll put that in a jar with some of the extracted honey. I melt all my extra wax and create beeswax chunks, and I'll use it for candles and other things. And then another thing I have to do, and I've gotten better and better about that because my memory is not able to keep track of all of the things I see in each hive, reliably. So I keep a good log, and most beekeepers do. All right, so that's what we do as beekeepers, but a lot of that translates, that the love of caring for our honeybee pollinators translates to caring for other pollinators. And in your neighborhood, there are probably more backyard beekeepers than you would even know about. The people have hives hidden in their backyards, and so what you do for wild pollinators also helps us as backyard beekeepers. So growing a variety of flowers and plants and things that bees would like a lot of people convert their lawns to clover. It's pretty and they flower and it's low growing. Planting areas of wildflowers that you don't have to mow. Probably the biggest thing is really watching your pesticides and herbicides. Anything you spray or sprinkle can get into a beehive and also kill our native species. A couple foraging honeybees going into a neighbor's yard where they've sprinkled pesticides, they can bring home enough to kill off an entire hive. And that has happened to me, where I have had a hive completely thriving, and then a couple days later, the entire colony is dead, and they're dead in the hive. So something had to poison them. So bees being so social, they share everything that they bring in. So unfortunately, that's a common problem, and that's also contributing to what is known as colony collapse disorder, in that bees are weakened from a lot of the um, pressures of parasites like mites, etc., and then they come into contact with a pesticide or an herbicide, and it's just too much. So if we can use more organic methods of pest control, I don't know if any of you are gardeners, but something that I got into doing years ago was like using parasitic wasps and putting other natural types of predators in the garden instead of, and planting extra trap crops away from my garden to attract pests away, so I didn't have to use any herbicides or pesticides. We have so many wild bees here, and it's fun to watch them too. And you can have more and more of those in your garden if you give them some homes. So building homes for native bees is fun and fairly easy, and they're kind of whimsically cute and functional. So that's an idea. If you have space and it interests you, you can go online and look at how to build a natural bee habitat. And I just enjoy watching them. Sometimes I'll just sit by the hive and watch them come in and out and bring their pollen and do their little dances, and they're fascinating. And I enjoy watching natural or the native pollinators as well. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, wow. That was a lot. How about we open it up to anybody? You can unmute yourselves if you have any questions or comments. And I will, let's see. Can we stop sharing the screen, Marilou? There we go. We can see everybody. Cool. Yes, somebody, Janet?
Yeah, I have a question. We have a farm and a lot of hay fields, which we use herbicides on. That would not be right next to where the bee population will be. We'll have more fruit trees and flowering trees, etc. But they do fly, and it would be within their range of 2 to 5 miles. What do you do about that?
Well, that's a good question. There are times when, for example, I live in an area where we have big orchards, and we've started a little bee club, and we've asked the people who run the orchards if they would be kind enough to let us know when they're going to do their spraying. And when they let us know, we lock up our bees. And
okay.
So it depends if you can partner with your local farmers. So and the wind will blow a lot of that around, and so usually after they spray, there's that window when it's the worst, which is right after they do it. And so you can lock up your bees, make sure they have some food, and then let them out a little while later. Other than that, you can't stop them from flying wherever they want to fly. So that's the only solution that we've come up with.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I have a couple of questions, Marilou. So when you talked about in the wintertime, they carry out their deceased sisters. So what does that look like? I mean, do you just all of a sudden see like a bunch of dead bees laying around? What do they do with them? What?
It's not. They don't have a service or anything. They drag them out and throw them over the edge.
But I mean, do you see just piles of dead bees like from?
Hopefully not. That would be an indication that something bad is happening. Otherwise, it's just a normal attrition.
Mm.
So, you know, with 60,000 bees in the middle of summer and them, you know, dying every, you know, if they're only going to live 5 to 6 weeks, every day you're going to have a certain percentage.
Gotcha.
My question is, do raccoons and squirrels go after beehives?
Squirrels, not so much. No, there's nothing in there that a squirrel wants, but and I haven't had any trouble with raccoons, but I do have trouble with skunks. And then, of course, then the dog chases the skunk, and that's another problem.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You talked about plantings, both to have around the hives and also to try to attract, draw away predators. Is there specifics that you can let us know what plantings those might be?
Well, you know, there is such a variety of bee-friendly plants, and I really thought about, well, should I go there? I am not like a master gardener or anything, and so I think it depends on your landscape, whether you want to do large scale like naturalization, or if you want to do shrubs and trees versus you know, lots of like annual flowers. So there's a lot of resources out there, and it depends on your climate. Like if you are going to be doing it up, and there's microclimates around, so like go up closer to wintergreen, and the recommendations would be different than right in town.
Yeah.
So I didn't. So there's a lot of resources though, and I think it depends on what you like. Do you want fruits and vegetables? Do you want just something pretty to look at? But there's a lot of options out there.
And Marilou, would you want to stagger those, like have things that are
Yes.
blooming at different times?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Nita. Sorry, I don't have my video on. I have a question about mason bees. I have a garden, and I've been seeing now these little houses for mason bees, and I'm just not sure. It seems to me that they're not producers of honey. I'm interested more in their pollination, but do they overwinter, and what are the requirements for them? And if you could help with that.
So mason bees are really, really cool. And they're one of the best pollinators that we have. I'm glad you asked about that though, because a lot of the kits you can buy, or the houses you buy for mason bees, they have tubes in them that you can't replace. And then they can get infected with various parasites and things. So what's recommended if you're going to try to make a home for mason bees is that you use replacement paper tubes, and you replace it every year. And also you can help the mason bees even more if you take their tubes after they put their larva in there for the winter, and you protect it. So you can bring the tubes in, put them in like a Tupperware container with some, special material, and then in the spring you put them back outside. And so yeah, there's a lot of people getting into doing that, and it doesn't take a lot of time, and just a little bit of care, you can really help the mason bees, and they're fabulous pollinators.
Thank you. This was an excellent talk too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? We got like 7 minutes.
I'm just amazed that, I mean, after halfway through, I thought, yeah, there's no way I could do all this. But you, you know, and the aphids and the murder horn. Good Lord.
Yeah, thankfully they're not here yet.
Okay, good. Well,
Yeah.
that's one thing. But you know, you're talking about seeing the hives at least every 10 days or whatever. Imagine there was quite the learning curve for you. And I do appreciate you talking about accidentally squishing queen bees. I've heard that from many a beekeeper that happens. So
yeah, I just did it this last season.
Beekeeper, yeah. So, but what would you say is the most rewarding part for you, or the most rewarding part? I'll give you a couple S's on that. Do that.
Well, I do harvest a little honey,
Sharpie.
but I don't eat a lot of honey, and I'm not doing it to make money. So it's not, I'm not doing it to sell. I really like seeing the bees thrive. And so one of the things I've gotten into is the reproduction. So if I have a hive that I really like they're nice, they intrigue me, I will make more queens and make more hives. And so that I've really enjoyed. And so I've gotten to where I'm just knowledgeable enough to select cells from hives where I want to make new queens, and I can take those and force the bees to turn them into queen cells and make new queens that then I can put in other hives. So let's say I have like a hive that I didn't like, that's kind of mean, or they're just not thriving, like the brood pattern isn't great, and I'm going to replace the queen. So I will force a hive that I like to make some extra queens, and then I take that baby queen and I put it into a hive that needs a queen. And so I used to buy new queens, and they'd set me back like $40, and you have to wait. And so now, I've gotten to where I can do that. And if I have good genetics, there are people who will buy queens. Who knows? Maybe someday I'll be able to help other beekeepers by selling them queen bees locally.
How do you make a queen? I mean, I came in a little late, so maybe you already addressed this, but I was just curious the whole way through. Where does she come from? How do you motivate the bees to create another queen?
It's not hard to motivate them because they know when they don't have a queen. So I can create an environment where they're queenless. So I can take a queen out of a hive, and 24 hours later, they are all buzzing like crazy, missing their queen. And at that point, I can put in a frame of special cells that have eggs in them, and they will start building those out into queen cells and feeding them royal jelly because they need a new queen. And so I can give them this frame with like 20 eggs on it that's specially made for them to turn into a bunch of baby queens for me. So you trick them a little bit by taking their queen out, and then their instincts kick in.
Cool.
And then it's all about bee math. It's timing at that point. So you have to know that 9 days after those eggs were laid, they're going to cap them. And then on day 16, all those queens are going to hatch out. So you have to do something before they all hatch out, or they'll kill each other. So at that point, you got to decide what you're going to do with them all. And you can then move them before they hatch and let them hatch in their new home. Or you can put them in cages, the cells in cages, and let them hatch out in a cage, and then you can move them where you want them. So, and I have gotten math is not my forte. So I have sometimes gotten my math wrong. And if you're wrong by a day, it could be disastrous. And I did that once. I underestimated by a day, and one queen killed all the rest of them. I had to start over.
How do you mark your queens? You said you mark them.
I had a picture.
I saw.
There's a picture in there with my fingers that I'm holding. Yeah, very carefully.
What do you
use?
To
mark it with?
Oh, it's a paint pen.
A paint pen. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
You use glow in the dark, so you.
Well, they don't. I don't have the glow in the dark kind, but it's just a colored paint pen.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? Anything else?
I think we're good.
So you all have seen me 3 times. It's been my absolute pleasure to chat with you again. I think I might be out of things to talk about, but I will probably attend some of your other meetings And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to chat with all of you. You're just a wonderful group. And so thank you.
Thank you, Mary
Thank
Lou.
you.
And Mary Lou's referring to the fact that I did a presentation on wreck diving in the Atlantic. Mary Lou was my dive guide and she was on that. And she also did a presentation called Into the Gyre. Is it gyre?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
plastic.
The
plastics
plastic in the ocean. So those are on our YouTube website. So if you want to hear Mary Lou talk about other things she's an expert in, you can go to our YouTube website. And if you just want to hear about bees, thanks for coming today. So this is also recorded and we'll put this on our YouTube website as well.
Oh, cool.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.